Greetings, my friends. Not sure if you've noticed, but everyone and their grandma has been playing Midnight of late. Classic WoW gamers are crawling out of their caves, putting on their best. Well, retail might not actually be that bad, Visage, and giving the latest WoW expansion a shot. Or anyway, at least they were when I began making this video. So naturally, I made the best possible decision and decided to do the same. It's just good business, my friends. However, if you are familiar with me already, you know I just can't play the game normally. As a Chad classic hardcore adventurer, I yearn for something more. So instead, I wanted to see how far I could get through the Midnight expansion as what is essentially a background NPC. An absolutely unqualified citizen of Silvermoon City. Now, my friends, meet the newest member of the Scorpverse. Meet Scorpionis, a blood elf with no useful life skills, broke as hell, wearing a full set of white common quality civilian clothing. He's a warrior purely because every race can be one, and if everyone can be a warrior, then no one is. And they obviously aren't very special. No! And because I enjoy being an epic hardcore gamer, this is hardcore rules. Plus no gear upgrades, no flying, no outside help, and no suddenly pretending I'm the main character. I want to see what happens when we attempt to bring classic consequences and difficulty into modern WoW. Which, to be honest, my friends, is a sentence that should probably get me sent to a mental institution. But we'll see what happens, shall we? So I make the character log in and immediately get offered a choice between Exile's Reach and Sunstrider Isle. Now, you would think that based on how they present this, that I'm about to load into the shiny new Midnight version of Eversong Woods. New expansion, new revamp, new era. Very exciting. But hold on, have I just been scammed? Because apparently the actual Midnight stuff is not where Blizzard implies it is. So instead of beginning my grand civilian adventure where I wanted, I now have to somehow get from the old world Eversong Woods to the revamped version the hard way. So we run to Silvermoon City, take the teleporter, and then somehow make it through the Eastern Plaguelands? That would make even Zario blush, and at this point the challenge hadn't even started, and I was already cooked, chat. But then I remember playing Housing Exists, and more importantly, I remember that I can teleport to my non-existent house plot, and it drops me somewhere much more useful. Because, what do you know? The Orgrimmar portal is sitting right there. Now, my friends, before committing to this challenge, I did a little investigation on my level 80 rogue ScorpRogue, because I wanted to see exactly where the Midnight questing began. And I quickly found out that none of those quests in Silvermoon City were even available for your average Joe. So I downloaded one of those questline tracking add-ons. And after some digging, I discovered the reason. It turns out to unlock all those quests, you need to actually complete the Midnight intro scenario, which requires level 80. So, I activate the complimentary level 80 boost, because that is apparently how modern WoW gamers do things these days, and I choose the continue where you left off option. However, my friends, Blizzard had gaslit me again, because I am immediately thrown into an entirely different continent, and without my consent, which you'd think they'd care about after the whole milk fiasco they had going on. Fine, man, whatever. We make our way back to Orgrimmar, so I can find the Experience Eliminator guy and lock my XP before the challenge properly starts. Except, well, he doesn't let me, so I check Wowhead. And apparently, Blizzard Entertainment quietly kneecapped high-level characters, preventing them from locking their XP gain. All because of Rex Troy, who kept abusing their under-budgeted systems. There is no clean setup for this challenge, and so I accept what must be done. I strip off all of the green communal gear that I received from my boost, and I go shopping and purchase the finest set of absolutely useless civilian clothing that gold can buy. No stats on a single piece of gear, just rad vibes. And what do you know, I do look quite dashing, even if I do say so myself. For a weapon, I equip a wooden training sword that does a terrifying 0.6 damage per second, and I look incredible. And, my friends, because I barely know the modern game and know even less about being a warrior, I let the game choose my talents for me with this nifty little starter build. And with the starter build selected, I move on to the hero talent, and I pick Slayer as it sounds cooler. And then, as the next rule of this challenge, I should probably remove all of the gold I have, and so I try donating the rest of it to this random orc. But apparently 2k gold is chump change to retail Andes, who routinely buy hundreds of thousands via the fabled WoW token. So the gold gets dumped into the Warbound bank, and at long last, Scorpionis begins his midnight hardcore civilian challenge, with nothing but civilian clothes and empty pockets. I get thrown directly into the Void Invasion on Quel'Thanas. Not collect Millie's harvest, not speak to Marshall McBride, straight into the Shadow Apocalypse. And the mobs here are regular enemies by retail standards, but to a civilian with a wooden sword and the health value of wet tissue paper, these creatures may as well be raid mobs. My first objective is not to complete the quest objectives, it is to survive. Thankfully, I find these Lightspire spears lying around, which I can only assume most players ignore because they're too busy pressing the nuclear launch codes on their action bars.
3, 2, 1.
But for me, these armaments are life support. And even with the fabled one-button rotation playing for me, one normal mob is taking substantial chunks of life out of me, and I quickly realize something horrifying. I am weaker than a level-appropriate classic character against these fiends, and that should not be possible, and yet here we are. I manage to rescue a Silvermoon guard, who becomes a hugely important factor in my survival. This challenge immediately becomes about abusing every resource Blizzard Entertainment accidentally leaves lying around for those noob retail gamers. Then, naturally, the moment I see a giant void monstrosity, my Silvermoon Guard companion decides to AFK. What a cowardly dog. Luckily, I'm soon joined by a hot elven woman and a blood elf guard. And with that kind of squad, how could the void possibly hope to stop me? Together we push forth, rescuing civilians and doing our patriotic duty as blood elves. At one point, a giant evil blob monster was nearly killed by other players, so I contribute by coughing in its general direction, tagging it for quest credit.
It's done. The way is clear. If we don't protect those ships, we have set the people aboard them to die.
A true gamer moment. Then comes the truly premium Blizzard vehicle combat, and it's good to see the quest designers haven't lost their touch.
You did it, champion! The civilians escaped the devouring host!
Oh, thanks for leaving me behind, guys. Now, I may not be allowed a mount in this challenge, but there is a chocobo standing right there. So I leap atop the beast, and it carries me forth, so that the storyline does not leave me behind. We reactivate some sentinels, which is fine, But then I hit the point where the enemies stop being fodder, and I start being directed to slay these elite creatures. So I collect more light spire spears, and wait for these stronger players to engage these elites first. A Night Elf Druid starts battling one of them, and I swoop in to tag it for credit. Same for the next one too. The only downside is, every time I tag these fiends, well, their health balloons. It turns out they scale with the number of attackers, meaning I'm not actually helping. I'm actually just making the druid's life measurably worse. It's clear that they are not impressed with my contribution. Eventually, we do meet with the Army of the Light, and Arator finally gets sick of carrying me around. Which is a problem, because I very quickly discover just how much work he was actually doing, when a single ethereal opponent nearly ends the challenge on the spot. I have no choice but to run. I throw myself off a building just to escape, and land at about 1% health, nearly turning this whole challenge into a sorry waste of $50. Thankfully, I stumble across a couple of players battling the ethereal boss, and I certainly could not have beaten this alone. Once again, my main contribution is showing up at the right time and claiming my participation trophy. Then I get sent to gather artifacts that come from that one raid in TBC Classic, and this section of the challenge is more like a yard sale for magical weapons, because first I find these daggers, which unfortunately give me a lame version of Shadow Step. Even the ethereal NPCs are able to outplay me. Then I find a legendary staff, which, after the hate crimes I committed against those ethereals while wielding it, well, you'd think that would get me roughed up by these enchanted toilet paper-faced fiends. But then I come upon a scepter, which fires super rad cosmic energy that absolutely vaporizes them. Now, after all this fun, I do also have to use the lame artifact weapons, like this Frostmourne that is clearly half price. It's called Scourgebane, and although it's great for knocking ethereals off the ledges, sadly it's made redundant because these ethereals do not respect the Z-axis. Classic players know, some things never change, I guess. Then I get a bow that's actually solid for sniping, and an axe with a spinny attack that's quite strong indeed, although not even as strong as my Blade Storm. So naturally, after all that slaughtering, Terralion decides I've proven myself, and invites me on that final push against the forces of the Void. Now, your typical retailer would ignore these holy domes. I, however, really do have to stop in these safe zones to maintain my limited health. Then Void Godzilla shows up. I throw my Lightspire spears, but nothing happens. It simply does not care. It has no respect for the time and effort I put into retrieving them. So I do the only sensible thing for a civilian like me. I run. And now I'm being told it's up to me to defend the Sunwell itself, wildly inappropriate for someone in city clothes wielding a wooden sword. But here we are. As I engage with these fiendish dogs, I soon realize I'm simply not built for this. I open the spellbook in full panic mode and discover I can spell reflect the Void Blasts. And suddenly these enemies are taking more damage from their own spells than from me. I could also Stormbolt, and even Shockwave them, and generally survive by turning every one-on-one battle into a bureaucratic process. That means it takes a long time. The problem is these mobs die in about 5 globals for your average Joe, but they take me roughly the length of editing this video to defeat. That is, until I meet a hero, a dinosaur bear named Beasts. This magnificent creature starts mowing down packs of enemies, and I realize I can just AoE near them, get credit, and pretend I'm helping. I gobble up his XP and complete the objective, and I even get credit for the final boss. the Sunwell is saved. You are welcome. And finally, at last, I can make my way into the grand Silvermoon City. The only issue being this absurdly long bridge between me and the city itself, and while most players would fly over it in 12 seconds, I decide to walk.
Some players are taking their enjoyment into their own hands. They're exploring all of Midnight on ground mounts.
Very disrespectful to the artists, if you ask me. You're not really getting your money's worth if you aren't stopping to smell the roses.
You can even argue that zooming around a mount means you get less value out of your purchase. While most of us flew into Silvermoon zooming past that statue straight to the next quest, some saw something different. Those who stayed in the ground saw this.
And on a mount, you'd run right over these carefully placed twigs and leaves. There are probably gamers who spend $80 on this expansion and have not actually looked at any of these details because they were too busy launching themselves over all of this free content, all to lose the race for world first. Someone at Blizzard is certainly getting fired for this one. It's the little details in the foliage, the frill fish in the water. Look at them, they are different colors. Someone had to place that mob right there, and you didn't even see it. How much of the world is left unexplored by those mounted fools? Mounters, as I call them. I even stopped to admire and join a battalion of Blood Knights on the road. Then at last I arrive in Silvermoon City. Familiar, yet upgraded. Proper grandeur. High elven excellence, if you will. We are truly the chosen people, and I receive free gifts for being a blood elf. I can openly be my true self in this fair city, harassing the lesser races who forget they are guests in Silvermoon. This sign here clearly says no Draenei allowed. Now, let's get down to brass tacks and find our Lord and Savior. It sure does feel good watching those lowborns get put in their place.
Hold your tongue, High Exarch. That fount you so blithely pretend to understand predates the existence of human civilization. You are guests in our fair city. You are not needed.
I am pleased to see even Terralion getting verbally folded. These hooligans must learn that in our holy city, the Sindori reign supreme. Then I spend some time exploring. I chat up some elven babes who ask me a lot of questions. Like I know anything, I'm a civilian.
Protection. Are you certain of that?
By no means.
I get offered a place to stay by the innkeeper, who naturally directs me to her chambers. Of course, what can you expect? Can you honestly blame these fair maidens?
If you wish a room, it is yours.
Yes.
Now, I note the flight master because while I can't use normal mounts, these old school flight paths may actually help for this challenge. And honestly, it feels good to be a blood elf. Excellent music, advanced architecture, fine ladies, civilization. Oh, I believe Platinum WoW made a video up there. Let's see, line the video up with this tower. Shouldn't there be a window right about here? I'll have to fly up there, but it doesn't count against the challenge, okay?
I knew it!
Oh, hello, sir. Can you help me rig my VTuber model? My legs don't work. Wait. No! Oh, that was close.
The Sunwell tickles.
So then I was like, shut up, Terralion. Now that I have my whereabouts established, I decide it's time to focus on quests better suited to a civilian. Now, for you classic chabbed gamers like me, I do need to warn you, modern WoW is a very different game. For example, the pet shop owner wants me to track down and catch a runaway baby Hawkstrider. Oh, yeah, I can do that. But then this guy tasks me with kicking some fish back into a pond. Bear in mind, this quest was made by a salaried quest designer. However, I then hit a quest requiring precise movement that makes me realize modern WoW gamers may actually be dealing with mechanics beyond the scope of the average classic keyboard turner. So I buy a transmorphic tincture off the auction house, transform, and lure this stupid thing to my location with my newfound feminine charm. Most quests here are clearly designed for women, so I decided that, well, I could do a little bit of transitioning. I'm not opposed to doing that in the name of this challenge. And speaking of transitioning, I think we're ready to transition from thoughtless civilian to elven adventurer. So we head out to Sunstrider Isle. And to be fair, this zone looks great. Our first mission is a classic. Kill those lynx, collect their collars as proof of our deeds. Now, the adult lynx are actually quite scary. Nearly clapped me a few times, but the younger ones are manageable, which is not something I expected to say as a level 80 warrior. Remember dueling level 1s back in the day on your brand new character? No, me neither. So I end up kiting this guy around the pillars while second wind slowly patches me back together. It's ugly but effective, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. Until some alliance dog interferes and steals the glory. Then comes the crystal crates. Riveting. This quest, teaching noobs how to pick up items, probably wasn't necessary to include this go around, but it's a nice callback. This guy tasks me with collecting scattered book pages. You can either collect them from the ground or from the worms. Look at that player choice right there. Thanks, Ian. We really appreciate it.
Again, meaningful choice that we consider an interesting one. So, getting back to the topic of choice, there's a choice to be made there. I'm really glad I made this choice, and the choice you made pays off. People had to make choices, and choice has to have some degree of consequence.
Wow, you're so right. I often enjoy having to make the choice between any one action and breathing. I then beat up some mage apprentice who foolishly insist on slapping me with their wooden staves and wands. The mage leader takes his spellcasting a bit more seriously, but Spell Reflect once again comes in clutch, proving to be one of the most effective abilities in the game. Nothing says wizard superiority like getting your own fireball returned to sender. Am I right, guys? Or am I right? Of course, the coward layer hops to avoid the humiliation. But there's a cool treasure here where I follow around a phoenix collecting its flaming droppings in a bowl, which upon completion rewards me with my first ever housing decor item. So not only am I surviving the expansion as a civilian, I'm also furnishing my property portfolio. Modern WoW really does have something for everyone. With Sunstrider Isle handled, I go back to Silvermoon City, and the instructor finally acknowledges me as something more than just a random civilian in dress clothes. Of course, I'm still keeping the civilian outfit on. We do have standards here. Then a goth demon hunter sends me to find her boyfriend somewhere above the bazaar, which sounds simple enough until I realize Silvermoon is full of upper terraces, lower terraces, side terraces, teleportation terraces, and enough verticality to make a level designer wet themselves. On the way I pass Murder Row, where a shocking number of beautiful blood elven women appear to be cosplaying homelessness. Perhaps they should launch an OnlyFans career. After some mindless wandering and a brief stop at what appears to be a cat cafe, I finally reach the highest point I can access by foot, and from there, the destination is right below me. But it's clear that there's no accessible way to reach my target location. Very ableist. Not what I'd expect from modern Blizzard entertainment, truth be told. Now, a lesser blood elf would give up on this questline altogether, but not I. I am Scorpionis. Then comes the Fellweed Conspiracy. You heard me right, friends. That demon hunter girl's boyfriend, is Belathula Dawnblade, whatever his name was. He wants evidence that certain blood elves have been dabbling in their old fell addictions again. Before long, I'm sneaking around in search of suspicious paraphernalia and genuinely seeing if I can purchase some of this fell weed for personal use. Then I meet the dealer. Now, thanks to being a blood elven civilian, I get a special dialogue option, and I'm pointed towards an underground battle arena where elegant elven society is apparently spending its evenings gambling, brawling, and doing magical narcotics. Obviously a disgrace, but it also makes quite good content. It's here I discover the smuggling operation, and it turns out blending in as a harmless civilian was the perfect disguise. And these fentanyl-addled elves, well, they make their biggest mistake, letting me in on their secrets. Belathula tells me to meet him at the harbor so we can shut down the whole operation. And this leads me to the first genuinely terrifying 1v1 challenge. The ringleader Talon, he is no joke. He even has a gun. So kiting him becomes much harder, and for a while the battle is less about dealing damage myself and more about avoiding it. I survive purely by treating this battle like it's classic hardcore, where line of sighting Talon's pistol shots is a well-practiced skill of any true classic gamer. And then, just as I am so close to victory, some gnome barges in and steals my glory, as is tradition for wretched gnomes. After that, I help one of those Magister types charge up some ward breakers, which I do not really understand at all. But I do understand that ding, level 81, which for a civilian dressed like this is frankly historic. Then that same Magister asks me to disable some wards with those ward breakers. And had I read the quest as a gentleman and scholar, perhaps I would have noticed I was clearly helping the wrong guy. Fun fact, you guys, over 20 years ago it was a Magister who helped Arthas Menethil break the wards protecting Eversong Woods from the Scourge. Not a very nice guy if you ask me, because yes, it turns out I am also assisting a suspicious elven Magister in once again breaking magical protections, which historically speaking is not a great look for any high elf like myself. Now, without pillars to line of sight, the arcane defenses, well, they would have killed me during this task. But somehow I manage it and I get led to a secret chamber. But it is a trap. A woman Magister appears, explains I'm an idiot for helping that other Magister dude, and tells me the only way to make things right is to gather dirt on him and help her blackmail the man, which feels very sleazy.
Sorry that happened.
Regardless, I ask around Murder Row for information, annoying a bunch of shady people and outrunning the ones who retaliate. And eventually I team up with a guy named Jay, who proposes that we commit some extremely selective theft. Fun fact number 2. If you steal goods not exceeding the value of 1,000 gold coins, the Silver Moon Guard will let you off with just a slap on the wrist. And in return for providing a distraction, Jay helps enhance my ward breakers with Fellweed magic. We use the Fell enchanted ward breakers to crack open the Magister dude's private warded hideout, where we discover he has blood elves strung up and dosed up on fentanyl. I smash the Fel crystal, releasing the demons, and discover that in Sargeras' absence, the Burning Legion, well, let's just say it's become quite desperate. Don't tell me they've resorted to femboys to replace their dwindling supply of succubi. Say it ain't so. Then, Magister Dude returns. He is furious. I am underdressed. No pillars at all to hide behind. And for once there is no beasts, no night elf druid, and not even a wretched gnome. Luckily for me, his gimmick is spellcasting. And mine is being annoyingly prepared. My arcane torrent strips his powerful energy shield. My spell reflect then sends his chaos bolt back into his face. I pummel him in the dick, and storm bolts fly, and then shockwaves ruin his ability to cast any sort of spell. And somehow, against all logic, the civilian wins. The Magister dude falls to the ground motionless. The Feltanilla dicks are finally freed, and Scorpionis, humble citizen of Silvermoon City, survives long enough to become something much worse. An adventurer. So please consider subscribing and giving this video a share to your grandma who still plays retail after all these years. Farewell for now, and always remember, light be with you.